the big fear for that is that it opens up more seats at the table.
Okay.
You can look at that two-sided, all right? And I tend to look at it from the latter side. The first side is if we invite other people in, then they have a say with how we manage and use these lands versus, in the past, it's Pittman, Robertson, Dingle Johnson, which Dingle Johnson is for hunting and fishing tackle, or for fishing bait and tackle, versus Pittman Robertson is guns and ammo and hunting equipment. The fear is that if we invite these outside players in, it's going to take away from the hook and bullet crowd. The latter side of it, which the side that I like to look at it as, is it's more money for outdoor recreation.
I don't know about you, but I always carry a knife. It doesn't matter what the situation is, I'm always reaching for a blade. Whether I'm out hunting in the backwoods, fishing on lakes and rivers, or simply cutting rope at camp. And when I need a tool, I want something that's quality, durable, and handmade right here in the USA. I know that's something you're looking for as well, so go to maloneknives.com and get yourself something that's going to last and look damn good too. This is the Aptitude Outdoors podcast, where we interview travelers, explorers, and outdoorsmen and women to bring you the best tips and stories from around the world. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Aptitude Outdoors podcast. Thanks for tuning back in today. Have a very special guest in studio here, Tony Ruffing of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Tony, how you doing today?
Good, excited to be here.
Heck yeah. So, Backcountry Hunter and Anglers, big organization, mainly focused out west, but you got the local Ohio chapter here. But before we start diving into that stuff, I'm kind of interested how you got involved with hunting and fishing. Did you grow up doing it? Did you get into it when you were a little older? How'd that come for you?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised Ohio. Grew up about an hour south of Toledo, little farm community called Republic, Ohio. Got into hunting, fishing, very traditional way. My dad took me when I was a kid. Mainly cut my teeth, rabbit and squirrel, but the big thing that we were into when I was younger was chasing coon dogs in the woods at night.
Cool.
We've gotten out of that just the way that anything happens. Land gets sold and traded, this and that. You kind of lose access, and raising coon hounds is a full-time occupation too. But we kind of got out of that. But it's definitely an area that you miss. It sounds funny, but chasing dogs at night, listening to them bay. That's a magical sound at night.
You might be the first person I've had on the podcast that has admitted that they're a coon hunter. I've never done it. Is it more like a tradition-based thing, or why do people coon hunt? It's not very common anymore, I would say.
It's definitely not for the fur prices anymore.
Yeah.
I think a good coon pelt goes for about $2. So it's definitely not for that. It's definitely more of a tradition thing. You're starting to see some popularity with trapping again, but it's mainly for turkey numbers, because coons and skunks and possums are just wreak havoc on a turkey nest in the springtime. But it's definitely a tradition thing anymore, and dogs anymore are pretty affordable, but it's still, like I say, you've got an animal that you've got to train year round, even if it's not coon season. Where I live, there's still a number of guys that will run hounds, and you'll hear them baying in June because they're trying to get dogs on a hot track and just keep them fresh for the season.
I got my first experience hunting over dogs last weekend. I was up with guys from MUCC, and a couple of them are actually on Backcountry Hunter and Anglers board up there in Michigan. What an experience, man. Those dogs, they're just so good at what they do, and and when a well-trained dog is doing its thing, you're just like, this is exciting. Yeah,
I've often said that, the people that are kind of anti-dogs and hunting, you really ought to go out with a bird hunter. You really ought to go sit in a duck blind, because man, you want to talk about seeing a dog in their element. Yeah, I've never seen an animal happier in its life than when it's on a trail or something. I don't care if it's, beagles running rabbits or retrievers, fetching ducks and geese out of the water. I mean, that's what they are made to do. And they love it. I mean, they're out there with a job. I've got a buddy of mine it's a rescue dog. It's actually half hound dog and half lab, and nicest dog you ever want to meet. You get him in the blind and he is all business. You don't touch him. He'll sit down beside you, and I've scratched his head before, and that dog's looked up at me like, what are you to pay attention?
Not on the job.
What are you doing right now? And, but I mean, just a goose slayer. That dog, if it hits the water and that goose flaps, it thing's on it and it's going to just tear it up, which, I mean, talk about animal rights. It kind of, backtracks a little bit, but I mean, that dog's out there to do a job, and it's great. I actually just was up in the UP with my wife, and I had our 5-year wedding anniversary up there.
Congrats.
Thank you. And I've got a friend that lives in Escanaba. He met us over, he's got two German short hairs, and we hunted with those, and that both of them just happy as can be. He's got a 7-month-old pup that actually flushed a woodcock for me.
Yeah.
That dog was super proud, and he was super proud just because he's got a young pup that seems to be taken to it real quickly, and just a great time. And, worst case scenario, you're walking in the woods on a beautiful fall day.
Yep. I would have to agree with that. That was the same experience I had. The guy that I was hunting with had a dog, a brand new dog, only a few months old, and he had a dog that's perfectly well trained for years and years. And watching the spectrum of all those dogs was super awesome. And they get so excited when they're ready to go. They look like they're shaking because they're red. They're like, I can't wait to go out here.
Their adrenaline's redlining.
Yeah. I watched a lab retrieve. I shot a merganser, and this lab retrieved it at 200 yards in a moving river.
Oh,
and I mean, the owner was shitting bricks, but he was like, wow, dude, like that was impressive. I mean, he was ready to hop in the boat and get the dog.
Yeah.
But the dog just like muscled it out. And watching those dogs is amazing. But kind of switch topics here. How did you get involved with BHA? And it's a big organization. They're all across the country. You got some big names as part of that organization. All the names we all know from television and stuff like that. But it seems to be people are getting more involved with organizations. I've been getting more involved with organizations because I'm more concerned about conservation than hunting at this point in the game.
Right.
Like I love hunting. I'm an adult onset hunter. I take it, last 5-6 years I've been doing this just because I love it so much. I've just been bitten by it. And now it's to the point where it's like, I need to be working on conservation because that's what's important. So how'd you get involved?
So really it started, about 6 years ago or so. A good friend of mine that he and I actually started the chapter together. We held the first pint night to kind of really get the ball rolling on it. We kind of put our heads together, both of us lifelong hunters wanting to, learn how to give back to the community, because the big thing you hear anytime people talk about, hunting and fishing is conservation, they always want to lean back to, Pittman Robertson dollars and, hunters buying license and tags, how, we're paying for it and this and that. And that's all true. But the fact of the matter is we're reaching a point in time where just buying your license and, you talk about Pittman Robertson dollars with, the excise tax of buying guns and ammo and hunting gear and stuff. Well, if you really think about it, think about gun season, right? You buy a box of shells before gun season. You shoot your gun 2-3 times, make sure it's dialed in, and then you shoot once or twice at a deer, and that's it. You buy one box of shells. That's not really, your tax dollars or your excise tax dollars are helping, but that's not really a big portion of what needs to be done. And, kind of the simple fact of the matter is, just buying your license and just buying, a few rounds of shells every year, it's not enough anymore. So we kind of put our heads together, thinking, what organization can we start in Ohio that is going to be relevant? and isn't already being done by another organization. And we tried to come up with a few things. We tried coming up with something with, more veterans' needs and things like that. We kind of came to the conclusion that with neither one of us being armed forces, and neither one of us, having that connection directly with veterans, maybe that's not the avenue that we look at. Maybe we try to find an organization that we can work with and bring them in. But, about that time is when, like, Randy Newberg's podcast became popular. Meat Eater was on the scene, started on the Sportsman's Channel, and Steve was starting his podcast slowly. And you started to see, podcasts themselves were becoming a lot bigger, and you started hearing people talk about BHA. And at the time, they had a couple rendezvous, which are big national, we can talk about later, but which is our big national convention. And they probably had about 300 people show up to it. So, good number, but not huge.
Yeah.
But you were starting to hear more and more people talk about it. Randy featured it on his television show. So I was already a member of it at the time, and I got on their website, and I was looking, I was like, they don't have an Ohio chapter. At the time, the closest was Michigan. But you started to see a few chapters come out east. Michigan had a chapter. There's a chapter, they had the New England chapter at the time, which was, all the New England states, which now it's kind of starting to break apart, as we get more and more chapters out east here. And I think there was a southeast chapter, which is basically all the southern states. But Ohio specifically did not have a chapter. So I got a hold of them. I reached out to them and, asked, hey, is there any interest in starting an Ohio chapter? And the coordinator at the time said, yeah, we've had a few people reach out. These are kind of the prerequisites that we look for. And it was something like they wanted to have a minimum of 90 members. I think at the time we had like 95. They wanted you to hold a pint night and, just really gauge interest from there. So we just kind of got the wheels rolling there, and we had our first pint night down in Columbus at Land Grant Brewing, which we've had a ton of pint nights with them. They've been a great partner to work with over the years. But we were leading up to our first pint night, and the coordinator called me about a week ahead of time and asked, hey, what are your expectations? What are you thinking? And I was like, boy, I'd like to get about 30 or 40 people there. And he's like, if you get 30 or 40 people there, that's going to be astounding. He's like, we just had and back then the biggest chapter per numbers was California.
Okay.
He said we just had a California tour of pint nights, and he said we had one that he said our biggest one had like 10 people show up to it. He's like, we had one there's like 3 people.
Wow.
And so I was like, well, we'll see what happens. We showed up to set up, and there was already 5 people there waiting for us. And by the end of the night, I think we had a group picture. I think we had right around 35 people show up. And so I called him right away, and he's like, that's unbelievable. I'm like, yeah. So we need to let's get the ball rolling here. And so we had our first phone call, and it was just open to anybody. It went out to all of our membership at the time. We had about 15 people join the call, kind of hashed out a rough board of directors from there. I was elected as chair at the time. We elected a co-chair. We set up, kind of the executive directors. And then we tried to set up just a few different committees from there, just kind of, throw anything at the wall and see what sticks, basically. By the time that first year was through, we were down to about 12 board members, but we had a group of folks that, really was excited. It was new, it was exciting. So we had a group of heavy hitters that were ready to go. And we threw our first official pint night as a chapter, I believe that January. And we had a rendezvous in May, and they announced our official chapterhood. So we've had a chapter for 5 years now.
Nice.
So it's been exciting. We at pre-COVID we were up to around 700 members. With COVID and everything, we took a hit on that. Which if you look at any other organization, everybody took a hit. When people aren't working, they don't have the money to spend generally for got to cinch the belt down a little bit, if you will. But, we're really working at, getting more events out again, get folks a chance to get involved. And that's kind of the unique thing about our organization is we are a grassroots organization that really tries to get our membership involved in a lot of different aspects.
Yeah. Well, I actually found out about you guys on Instagram. Some guy that listens to the podcast sent me a message and he's like, hey, they're holding a cleanup fishing kayak event on the Maumee River. And I was like, oh, cool. Well, that parking lot's like 15 minutes from my house. So I showed up because I didn't know. I mean, I knew of Backcountry Hunter and Anglers, but I just didn't really. There's a lot of organizations out there. So kind of one of my prerequisites is like, I got to meet some people and do some stuff before signing my name and giving some cash, which, I think everybody should do because you shouldn't just blindly join an organization. Right. So I show up and, we go out. I'll say we did a little more fishing than we did picking up garbage, which the Maumee River is not too bad in this area. Honestly, there are organizations that clean up. I mean, we found a little bit here and there. And we got stuck out on the river till like 9 p.m. or something because the water was pretty low. And I didn't make it to the pint portion. I was so tired. I was like, I got to go home. But it was a good time. And I actually met two guys that we basically were stuck together all day right out there. And still talk to those guys now. I mean, trying to set up like hunting trips, trying to set up stuff where we're going to the local public land. And I think that's really important for a lot of people too. Like someone like me who didn't get into this until I was a little bit older. I had Renee and Gray Thornton from Wild Sheep on the podcast in the past. And one of the things they told me was like, just get involved because when she's heads Women Hunt Foundation, part of Wild Sheep, she was like, I wouldn't start hunting until I was in my like mid 30s, or maybe even 40. And she's like, you got to get involved. So after that episode, I came home. I was in Texas. And I started trying to find stuff like what you guys are doing. And it's really awesome to meet people because they're all locally right here. They're kind of showing me the ropes of places and I'm maybe pointing out places to them that they didn't know. And it's really awesome to get that sense of community because hunting is community. It's a big community. I know there's a lot of people out there, dad, son, grandson, passing on generations. They're kind of their own little group. But for the average guy like me who didn't grow up doing it, it's hard to find. It's information. It's hard to find people to do this stuff with. And that's been a lifesaver for me. So that's a cool part about joining an organization. And then you guys are always posting on like Facebook and Instagram, local events. You do a lot of cleanups, pine nights, stuff around the state. And that's really awesome to get that networking in because that's, again, it's hard to find people to do this stuff. I mean,
I've been hunting my whole life and there's still, I've got a duck hunt that I drew for Killdeer Plains. And, I asked around to, my buddies that are close and then, just kind of reach out from there. It's hard to find, even for a guy that's been doing it his whole life, it's hard to find people that, that are available and want to hunt. And, but yeah, I mean, that's true, whether you're involved with BHA or Pheasants Forever, Ducks Unlimited, go to events, go to meetups and, if nothing else, you get to meet kind of like-minded people. I've stepped down recently, but I was chair of the organization for about 5 years. The people that I've met and the people that I'm still meeting, I mean, it just salt of the earth people from all walks of life, and kind of the interesting, I guess I should take a step back here real quick. Backcountry Hunters and Anglers as an organization, we're a public land organization. So we are kind of our mission statement is we want to be the voice for the outdoors person. And, we're hook and bullet by name with Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, but we really try to be an all-encompassing for the public land user, whether you like to hunt and fish, kayak, hike, horseback ride, mountain bike, whatever it may be, whatever gets you go, whatever gets you outside, that's the organization that we try to be. The pint night that you just mentioned up in Maumee, we had at Buffalo Rock.
Yep,
is that what it's called in Waterville?
Yep.
Just being there, there's a number of people that just came up and talked to us, hey, what is this? What's this organization? Met a couple that had actually rode their motorcycle down from Michigan, just by chance, and happened to be at that brewery and was talking with them, and he's like, yeah, I'm involved with MUCC up in Michigan and this and that, and just great people to talk to. But as far as organization, like I say, we're a public land organization. We do a lot of policy work. We do, and like I say, with our grassroots, we really try to get our membership involved. So we had the river cleanup on the Maumee. We try to do tree plantings. We've done a number of tree plantings down in the Wayne National Forest.
Okay.
We get involved on federal level, state level, local level. Just really try to, hit as many areas as we can. We just wrapped up Public Lands Month here in September, and we wrapped it up. We had a big pint night up in Northeast Ohio. We do raffles at our pint nights. Generally, we had our big raffle for the Public Lands Month. We raffled off a deer hunting trip for January, late season deer hunt. One of our board members is actually a guide for an outfitter service down in Southern Ohio. So pretty sweet, package to give away. And we work with a lot of businesses. We have a great number of corporate sponsors as well, like Yeti, First Light. A lot of the big names that you see in the outdoor space are involved with our organization as well. And then we try to work with local businesses as well too. We have knife sponsor Symbieta knives. He makes just beautiful cutlery. But with our policy work, the big thing that we just came off of in 2019, 2020 was the budget bill that Governor DeWine put forth for GRF funding. And that helped secure the purchase for the AEP Recreation Grounds, which is now the Appalachian Hills Wildlife Area. And it includes Jesse Owens State Park. And the big thing with that is especially in that area, it's AEP owned the ground originally, but it was privately owned. So what a lot of people didn't realize is because, you've had 3-4 generations of people hunting that their whole life, didn't realize that it was privately held. And so AEP kind of switching directions a little bit, was looking to kind of sell off the land. But because the Division of Wildlife and Department of Natural Resources has been managing it for the last 50, 60 years, they kind of gave the state of Ohio first option to buy.
Okay.
The problem with that is previous administrations had left the Department of Natural Resources and the Division of Wildlife in kind of a bad spot financially. So typically, any of your fish and wildlife commissions, or for us, it's the Division of Wildlife. Generally, the funding from that comes from those license and tag sales. Well, we were in a bad enough spot within the state that every county there wasn't necessarily a wildlife officer in every county in the state of Ohio, which that's a big problem. Especially, you get down in like Southeast Ohio, you have a lot of people travel from all over the country to hunt deer down there. Well, if you don't have at least one wildlife officer in each county, now you have to have one wildlife officer try to cover 3 different counties. It's impossible. Even if you see somebody directly, hey, this person is committing a crime, it might be 4 hours till they can get there.
Yeah.
So by then they're gone. So with that, we joined the Ohio Conservation Federation, which is kind of an umbrella organization within the state of Ohio for all the heavy players within the state for conservation. So you have backcountry hunters and anglers, you have Ducks Unlimited, you have Pheasants Forever, you have your local rod and gun clubs. We worked with the OCF and the Sportsman's Alliance. We had just different testimonies that we had to deliver to the State House from, we delivered testimony to the State House of Representatives, to the State Senate. And I think the one day Oh, shoot, we delivered testimony. It started at like 10, and we got out of there about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wow.
I mean, and it involved conservation organizations. It involved agricultural commission. It involved research stations, universities. Toledo was there, Bowling Green, Ohio State, Heidelberg, basically everybody, because it involved that budget bill. Like I say, involved the AEP recreation ground. It involved H2 Ohio. Mm-hmm. So it was just which H2 Ohio, it has been a huge water quality initiative. We can talk about that a little bit later here too. But basically it just covered a wide gambit of areas that really needed to be focused on. Mm-hmm. So with that, I mean, we've been really fortunate that we have not only an administration that wants to work with us, but we were able to get, our state representatives and state senators involved as well that kind of opened their eyes to how much we as the sporting community, mm-hmm. as the hunting and fishing community, backed this and wanted to get behind this. Yeah. We raised the license and tag fees, which hadn't been raised since like 2001. So even at the rate of inflation at the time, it wasn't anywhere close mm-hmm. to what it should be. And that, frankly, that ruffled a little bit of feathers. Of course. But, you explain to people like this needs to be done. Mm-hmm. And you look at other states as well that had done the same thing in the past, and, kind of how it really improved their quality of hunting and fishing within their state.
Life is hard, and we're out here doing larger-than-life things, whether it's pushing ourselves physically in the outdoors or mentally at work or in the podcast studio. Absolute Aid is here to help you focus, recover, and stay calm during your most intense moments. Absolute Aid, created by nature, made with science, for those who seek to do more. Well, that was something I was talking about last weekend, too, is, the out-of-state price to buy something like a license and tags up in Michigan is pretty high. You're talking like $200-ish to go hunting out of state. Yeah. And they said Ohio finally raised theirs to mm-hmm. match, which, it should be. I mean, it's maybe not where we're at sitting right here right now is not the most like ideal hunting grounds, but I mean, Ohio has tons of it's one of the states where they get big giant bucks out of, like it's all those corn-fed deer. I think they're going on down there. Oh yeah. So speaking of public land, it is something that I was awoken to pretty much in the last 2 to 3 years. It's Mark Kenyon's book. He wrote that book, and it kind of opened my eyes up a lot. And I've been reading some stuff about, even like the dams and stuff out west, just kind of how all this stuff works together. And, it is kind of scary with public land. Like, there's all this discussion, there's all this uproar about it, and people are getting mad, rightfully so, because it's one of those things, like, once it's gone, it's not coming back. Mm-hmm. There's no way. I mean, once you cut something, it takes millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to even attempt. And I've seen restoration projects around here. The parks have done some pretty huge restoration, wetland project restoration around here. And they opened it up to duck hunting, waterfowl hunting and stuff like that, which is awesome. They normally do not allow that kind of stuff. I think they work with the state on it a little bit. But either way, like, I think that's what the main issue is that I'm trying to get, because you hear about public land, everybody thinks out west. Mm-hmm. We have public land here in Ohio. We're sitting 15 minutes from Maumee State Forest from where we're at right now, which is a very limited space, I would say, but it's still the public land we have around here. And, opening people's eyes to, once stuff like that just goes away, like, it's never going to come back. And then for people that hunt around here, it's a blessing and a curse. I mean, it gets crowded, very crowded, but it's where else? If you don't have access to a farmer or something like that, you have nowhere to hunt. Right.
And I'm fortunate in that fact is, where I grew up, I know a lot of landowners. I have permission to hunt on private property, but I love to hunt public land too. Just this past weekend, I hunted, a spot up on the Portage River for Erie's own duck opener. And, it was a little crowded, but, we got into a mess of ducks this weekend. Best duck hunt of my life. And we had people set up 250 yards to the left and the right of us, and it didn't matter. Yeah. So the opportunity is there. Not everybody's going to be able to go out west and hunt, the Missouri Breaks or hunt elk in the Gila National Forest. But everybody has the accessibility and the ability to, find a public area that you can hunt or that you can hike on or that you can go fishing. Ohio's kind of unique in the fact that, with that GRF funding that we got in the last budget bill, and with some of the more that we've gotten within this past budget bill, which, we were involved with that a little bit too, but that wasn't quite as involved as what the first time around. The first time was really, getting your head above water. And now it's to a point where, the powers to be, if you will, within the state government kind of realize that, no, these people want this. We have added wildlife areas and we have added access areas, and part of that's been GRF funding, part of that's been H2 Ohio funding. There's a wildlife area going in close to where I live now that it's, the landowner that held it before wanted to kind of donate it back to the state, and with H2 Ohio funding, the Wolf Creek, which runs directly into the Sandusky River south of Fremont, which then from the Sandusky flows into Muddy Bay and into the Portage River and then out to the lake. It's because that it's all part of that watershed. H2 Ohio funding was able to help with that funding, and now it's going to be, I want to say, like 200 acres. Which in the grand scheme of things doesn't sound like a lot. But 200 acres in Northwest Ohio is huge.
Yeah.
That's a huge area. And they're going to put some wetlands in, some native grasses, some good pollinator areas. They're trying to accommodate for like monarch butterfly migration as well as waterfowl and different things like that. It kind of one of those deals. What's good for the bird is good for the herd type, kind of viewpoint at it. So you have areas like that are opening up and expanding. So, like I say, the opportunity is there and it's available. It just takes, getting, wearing out some boot leather, getting out there and finding it.
Yep.
And you can check within your own county's park department as well. Like I know in Seneca County, our parks department has county parks that some of them are open during hunting season to hunting. It's general access. You don't have to draw, a special permit or anything. Hancock County has a few that it is a kind of a draw thing, but they make it pretty accessible for folks. And there's urban availability as well. Columbus has an urban deer hunting program. I believe Cleveland has an urban deer hunting program. Cincinnati does. I think Toledo does in a few spots.
I don't know. I'm still learning the ropes around here.
It might, if it's not Toledo, it might be kind of the greater Toledo area, Perrysburg, Oregon, that, those areas. But, it's definitely worth looking into. Most of it involves getting some sort of archery proficiency test done, which I know for Columbus is like hit a 6-inch target at 20 yards, which most people that bow hunt can probably hit. It sounds way more intimidating than it actually is.
And if they can't, they probably shouldn't be bow hunting yet. They
should probably keep practicing. So, but yeah, in a world where we're worried about losing access, Ohio's making steps to improve that access and create more access.
So as, a guy who hunts public land a lot, this might be a selfish question. Where's some good places to hunt in Ohio? Because it's one of those things is like, I'm very lucky in the fact that I know people in Michigan and it's so close. We're talking less than 20 minutes from where we're sitting to get to the Michigan border. There's a lot of opportunities up in Michigan, but I want to learn more about where I live. I have one access farm that I can hunt at around me. Other than that, it's all public land. And speaking of public, Wood County has some parks that you can hunt at. You just need a permit, and it's the rule. They have their rules and their regulations, obviously. But I shouldn't say that because I'm trying to hunt at them. But now people know. But that's okay.
Yeah,
that's my goal.
At the risk of creating your own competition.
It's already packed out there.
Yeah, it kind of boils down to what you're looking for. Turkey season. I love to go down to Southeast Ohio. Our board of directors, we had a turkey camp in Zaleski State Forest. It's been 3 or 4 years ago now, but Zaleski State Forest is actually where They started turkey reintroduction back in the 60s and 70s.
Extirpated.
It's a great area, beautiful area, kind of right between Hocking Hills area and the Wayne National Forest. They have Lake Hope State Park buttered right up to it, so you have camping options there. They have what's actually they call it the Hunter's Ridge. It's just a primitive camp, so you drive up, drop a tent, and go do your thing. Wayne National Forest is a pretty big expanse, so you have you can basically pick your choice there. As far as like deer, it's Ohio. Pick a place on a map, and you'll probably find deer. There's spots that have better access than others. We've had a muzzleloader camp down in the Ironton district for deer for the last couple of years. Last year we went down. Just colder than Billy hell. I mean, it was. I think opening morning muzzleloader season, it was about 5 degrees.
It's always fun. I always love that feeling.
5 degrees in southern Ohio. So, but I mean, and for ducks and geese, duck hunting in Ohio is pretty hit or miss. Like I say, we got into a mess of birds last week, and there's 4 of us. We killed 8 ducks and 2 geese. Mm-hmm. Like I say, best duck hunt of my life. Usually I've gone seasons and not killed that many. So,
wow.
It's you get up around the lake, get around Erie Zone. There's good duck hunting to be had, but don't be afraid to get in there early. Like we met at the parking lot at about 4 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
just to make sure we were there in time, and the area that we were hunting was not very big. And expect to have shot rain down on you. Like it's gonna happen. Just be careful, be courteous. We were gonna set up in one spot, and we thought we were the only ones there. And about the time we started setting decoys, we had a spotlight show up on us like, hey, we've been set up here. So it's gather up your stuff and move down, first come, first serve, And then, small game opportunities, that's the thing a lot of people forget. There's small game to be had in Ohio. Deer, maybe I'll get it. Squirrels, rabbits.
Yeah.
There's pheasant releases all over the state. People kind of forget, but Northwest Ohio used to be a destination for pheasants. Unfortunately, we've had farming practices have changed. Mm-hmm. We've lost habitat. And the blizzard back in '78 put a real hurt on our pheasant and our quail population up here. But there's still public areas that they have releases on. Usually, if you follow the Division of Wildlife's Facebook page or Instagram page, they usually announce when and where and how many birds they're going to release, and it can be a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I've gone out, and there's a couple areas close to where I live where they release birds, and if you can get in there after a youth hunt, you can usually find survivors from that, and it's always a lot of fun. You got to remember that you're shooting farm raised birds, but if you're just looking for an experience or looking for something new, plus pheasants taste awesome.
Yeah.
There's opportunity to be had all over the state. The other thing that Ohio has done is it's what's called OLAP, so it's Ohio Land.
Is it the landowner allowing? Yeah, I just found out about that the other day.
So it's basically private landowners who are opening up a portion of the property that they own. There's just a sign in that you have to fill out like the day before. That way it doesn't get overcrowded with people. The first year for that was, I think, last season. This will be the second year for it. It seems in this year there's more properties than there were last year. It seems to be getting pretty good momentum and pretty good reviews for it. The big thing to remember with that, again, when you talk about being kind and being courteous on public land to other people, go that extra step for those landowners. Don't leave anything out there. If you see trash, pick it up, take it with you, which you should be doing anyways. Mm-hmm. But just really make sure that you're catering to it, because again, all it takes is that landowner to have one bad experience.
Yep.
Gone. They don't want to do it anymore, and who can blame them? They're already sticking their neck out by letting people use their property. And if it becomes too much of a hassle for them, it's the state gives them a little bit of money per acre. it's not enough to make, it doesn't
Yeah.
even cover their property taxes. It's basically it's a charitable donation for them.
It's there's a lot to be said for people who take advantage of stuff like that and then ruin it for everyone. It always takes one, and it always happens. It's one person. I've experienced that where I'm at. I mean, my father-in-law used to let people hunt his woods all the time on his farmland, and then he went out there one day after hunting season, found a bunch of beer cans scattered everywhere. He's like, no. And now I have people knocking on the door all the time because we live in his old house, and they're like, hey, is your father-in-law here? I'm like, dude, you're not hunting here. And they're like, well, he used to. I was like,
not anymore.
Sorry. But they're still out there trespassing. I've busted them a few times sitting out there myself, and it's a shame, man.
Yeah, I've had landowners that the thing I try to do when I get permission on a private farm or something, I go around to the surrounding landowners and just introduce myself, and just in case, because you never know, put a subpar shot on an animal or something and it goes on the neighbor's property.
Yep.
All it takes is knock on the door. Hi, my name's Tony Ruffing. I'm hunting your neighbor's property. I just want to know, like, if I shoot something and goes running on yours, is it okay to get it? 99 times out of 100, I have people say, absolutely, go for it. The other thing I try to do is, if it might open up a possible access point, if there's a spot on that farm that I want to hunt to, but the landowner that I am hunting on, there might only be one place to park, and for me to get there, I'm going to blow everything out. Yeah. But if I can get permission from the neighbors to walk through their property, not hunt it necessarily, but walk through their property. And I've had people in the past that have been like, I'm really, just not sure about this. And just, make it very clear, like, look, I'm not wanting to hunt your property. I just want to walk through it. And if they say no, you say, thank you for your time, and you move on. But last turkey season, I had permission for a farm. I wanted to access it through the landowner, through the neighboring landowner. And the woman that owned it said, we really don't let anybody hunt here anymore. We've just had too many bad experiences. People, we found our place trash and stuff. And I said, I completely understand that. I'm not looking to hunt it. I just want to access through your side. And she was like, that's fine. I just don't want anybody to hunt it. And usually that'll open up a door to it, develops a relationship, and maybe down the road they will let you hunt it. But for the time being, like, you have permission to walk across, let's stop there.
Yep. And you got to think about it too. These people don't owe you anything. They own this property.
No.
The fact that you're carrying a firearm onto their property puts them at risk for anything that happens. And like, it's our job as hunters to be our own best PR people. And
I'm a 6 foot, 280 pound, former college defensive lineman. Yeah. Like, I know what I look like when I come knocking up on somebody's door. So I try to, knock on the door, take a few step back, take my hat off, and, just try to take up as little space as you can, and try not to look like a grizzly bear standing on their doorstep.
Yeah, it's totally awesome when you can build that relationship too. Because I've had to do the same thing. I've been out there before I even knew what Onyx was. I'm out there on the county auditor website looking up phone numbers for property owners because my deer ran into the adjacent lot. And I'm calling the guy, and he's like, what? Who are you? And I'm like, I'm sorry, my deer ran onto your property. I don't want to hunt. I just want to go retrieve it. And he's like, oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah. And you got to, like, I call him every year now, like, hey, I'm going to be hunting. If something happens, is it cool? Yeah, I got his number in my phone. Like, that stuff's kind of important because you have no right to be on their property if they say no. You
never want to have to make a call at 10 o'clock at night. Yeah. Because you're blood trailing a deer and it goes onto the neighbor's property. It's like you have two choices. I can try to call now. I know I don't want to be called by anybody at 10 o'clock at night, or I let it lay overnight and try again tomorrow. And so, I mean, that's just kind of the ups and downs of it.
Yeah. So speaking of, you talked a little bit about policy work. You said you didn't have any huge projects that you're working on right now, but generally, what are some of the projects that you like to undertake if the opportunity comes up? I know you talked about trying to save some public land, maybe work with landowners, but generally in Ohio, what is BHA working towards?
Right now, I would say our biggest policy work is still directed towards H2 Ohio. And for anybody that doesn't know, H2 Ohio, like I said, it's a huge water quality initiative. Mm-hmm. It kind of all got started back during the big algae bloom that we had in 2015, I believe, where Toledo was under a boil ordinance, and that was kind of we need to take action right now, or we're going to have another Flint, Michigan on our hands, basically. Mm-hmm. So it's been a joint effort with the Department of Natural Resources, with the Department of Agriculture, with Health and Human Services. And what we've seen from that work is that since then, we've had, our algae bloom. We still have algae blooms, obviously, and you have any body of water, you're going to have algae blooms, but they've been decreasing steadily over time. This past year we had, a hot, wet summer, and we had a record low algae bloom since, for the last 10 years. And last year it was a hot summer as well, and we had, lower algae blooms. So the big thing with H2 Ohio and the projects that it's done, phase one was, where can we get the most bang for our buck? So the state searched around, tried to find landowners, tried to find people willing to sell land, trying to find land that was for sale, and really make the most of the money that they had. Mm-hmm. So, big project in Fremont, Red Horse Bend, which you can see. You drive if you take Route 20 through Findlay through Fremont. As you're passing over the Sandusky River, you can see it on two sides. Okay. One side is a wetland area. The other side is more of an upland grassland area. And what that does is it's just recreating those natural filters that we had back when, this area was the Black Swamp. Mm-hmm. And it's trying to set up those areas where water can, when we get these heavy rainfalls like we get in spring and early summer, an area where that water can really hold and concentrate and allow for those wetland grasses and habitat to absorb that excess nutrient that it might be taking off the field. Yeah. The other thing is, there's the implementation of cover crops and, manure management. My family, we raise beef cattle. We've been involved with manure management since 2016 when it became, a first relevant thing. Mm-hmm. And you find a lot of there's personally a thing that really annoys me is when, people want to attack the farmer, this and that for, they spread too much chemical on the ground and manure is just being flung everywhere. Well, the thing to remember is for farmers, there's still a budget process that they have to follow if they want to make any kind of money. The farming practices that we implement today, there's far less overnutrition being put down now than what there was 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. Input costs rise. People need to be a little bit stringier on where and how they use those applications. There's GPS tools that are being made now where, soil samples are being collected of, okay, this acre needs this amount of coverage versus this acre needs that amount of coverage. So things have gotten smarter, and as things get smarter along those lines, you see, kind of less overnutrition, less fertilizer, less chemical being used. And then as far as like manure storage management goes, there's manure storage facilities that are being made, and that's part of H2 Ohio funding that trickles down into the county extension agencies for livestock producers. Mm-hmm. And basically what it is during the time of year where you don't want to spread manure because cover crops aren't available yet, or there's, crops in the field that haven't come off yet. It's a place where producers can hold and store that manure, and it's an open-sided covered building. And when the time is right, they can clean those buildings out and spread on cover crop or spread on cornfields before, things get plowed under. Mm-hmm. And that really helps with, manure runoff going into, the water system. So it's all practices that are being done and have been being done for the last, 10 years or better. I'm a contractor for a living. I've been building manure storage facilities since the mid 2000s. So it's one of those things that, the steps have been going in the right direction for a long time, but now it's become an area where, because we're seeing the success, that it's really starting to get its recognition. People are becoming more and more familiar with it. So with the H2 Ohio funding, phase one, what, like I said, was most bang for your buck. Really focusing on the Maumee River, focusing on the Sandusky River, everything that flows directly into the western basin of Lake Erie, where we saw those massive algae blooms. Phase two is going to be focused on continuing with the western basin, but also expanding into the eastern basin of Lake Erie, and expanding further south towards the Ohio River. So you're going to see more and more projects coming up throughout the state that all has that focus of water quality. Because the thing with Ohio, we're a water state, we're a Great Lakes state. And Lake Erie is, as far as funding for the Division of Wildlife goes, Lake Erie is our golden goose. We've got the walleye run where people come from all over the country. I mean, if you've ever seen the Maumee River in March, April,
many a time,
it is butt to gut out there. People are lined up along those shores, walleye fishing. Boats. You go out to Port Clinton, which is the walleye capital of the world, and I'll fight anybody that says otherwise.
You're in the hometown of what people call the walleye capital of the world. That's dangerous. This building might collapse, but we'll continue.
They're allowed to think that, but they're wrong. But if you go out to Port Clinton, there's, I've seen boats from Minnesota, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, all over the South coming up for the walleye run, and not to mention the summer fisheries that people go out for perch. Bass is big in Ohio. You've got all these people traveling from all over the country just to go fishing in Ohio. And the fishing opportunity may be more focused on a few species versus if you go to other states, it's a wide variety, but it's still it's huge for conservation dollars. But then you bring it into your local economies as well. So that when you talk about investing in conservation, a stat that I found, and I wish I could remember the website that I found. It's basically Outdoor Economy is the website that this all bases around. But for every dollar that you invest in wildlife or a wildlife area, your return is two. And that trickles down from jobs created to the people, all the way down to people stopping into the gas station to buy a bottle of pop. So conservation is a huge economic driver. It's the second biggest economy. Ohio's outdoor economy is the second biggest money producer in the state, right behind agriculture.
Well, I've had a lot of different organizations on this podcast here locally, and even the Black Swamp Bird Conservancy, they were talking about. They're just that 1 week alone brings in, like, I forget the number. I'll butcher it. It is in the millions and millions and millions
people
of dollars.
From all over the world.
All over the world are coming here, and I think it's really important that people don't overlook that, because like the outdoors is a huge driver for money. Aside from hunting and fishing, how much money, millions and millions of dollars, are people spending on backpacks and freaking hiking poles and all this crap that they take outdoors with them? All like this high-end outdoor clothing. And, this is something I've been toying around. There's a few things. We're going to an hour here, but this probably run over. I want to cover a few topics you talked on. Something that I've been talking to people about, and it's somebody brought up on the podcast. Wasn't my idea, but they're throwing around the idea of, like, all this stuff we use for hunting and fishing is taxed for conservation money, essentially, at the end of the day. It's like, why don't we have something similar for just general recreation? When you buy a kayak, when you buy a backpack, when you buy a hiking pole.
So the term for that has been backpack tax.
Yeah, that's it.
And basically the big fear for that is that it opens up more seats at the table.
Okay.
you can look at that two-sided. All right. And I tend to look at it from the latter side. The first side is if we invite other people in, then they have a say with how we manage and use these lands versus, in the past it's Pittman, Robertson, Dingle Johnson, which Dingle Johnson is for hunting and fishing tackle, or for fishing bait and tackle, versus Pittman Robertson is guns and ammo and hunting equipment. The fear is that if we invite these outside players in, it's going to take away from the hook and bullet crowd. The latter side of it, which the side that I like to look at it as, is it's more money for outdoor recreation. Yeah, there's more outside voices, but at the end of the day, we just want to get outside, right? We want to find areas that we can recreate. Most of the time, you're not going to, the fear is the granola crowd, but most of the time, I've run into, I've gone out west a couple times elk hunting. I've been, 5 miles back and run into people from San Diego, California, or San Francisco, California, that, oh yeah, we're here on vacation. We're just going on a hike. And it's like, okay, I'm a rural Ohio guy, and here's these San Francisco Californians. How's this going to go out when they see me all cameled up and carrying a bow and I've got a sidearm on me? And I've never had a bad experience. They've asked questions. They've how did you get here? What all is involved, and this and that. It's all about, again, trailhead diplomacy. If you're polite and courteous, and yeah, you're always going to run into the assholes. It's inevitable. They're out there. But
whether they're hunters or backpackers,
right?
Right. I've met plenty on both sides,
yeah, right? And I hate to say it, but more times than not, it's been the hunters that have been the assholes, because it's like, well, you're in my spot. Well, I was here first, So, but
the public part of public land.
You're right, right. But the one thing, something that I would like to see done within the state of Ohio, Missouri actually did it, and it's something like from their I want to say it's their income tax, but it's like 1% of 1 penny spent in this, or it's their sales tax. 1% of 1 penny spent in the state goes directly towards conservation funding. The state of Missouri now has more money for their Department of Natural Resources than they know what to do with. What a great problem would be to have, Think how much more we could expand our public land system in Ohio, which frankly, I'm here promoting public land in Ohio, but we're 43rd in the country as far as public land is, accessible public land is available. There's a little over 600,000 acres. That's why the AEP recreation ground, the Appalachian Hills Wildlife Area, was so important. That's 60,000 acres. Mm-hmm. That's 10% of our public land holdings that we almost lost. So that's why we were so stringent and worked so hard. And I say we, it's all encompassing. It's Backcountry Hunters and Anglers and all the other organizations and all the other local rod and gun clubs that were involved. I mean, it was a huge undertaking, but it was so important that we did so because, look how much we would have lost otherwise. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The other problem with Ohio is we have, this public land, but there's 12 million people who live in this state.
I think it's the 7th or 8th most populated state in the U.S.
Yeah. I mean, it's there. We've got a lot of people here. And as industry moves in, the microchip plant down in Columbus comes in, there's going to be more and more people come in. More and more people are going to want to find places to get outside. Find me one person in Ohio that hasn't spent a weekend in Hocking Hills. I mean, it's the, yoga pant, Starbucks latte of public land in Ohio. Everybody goes there and everybody loves it.
Yep.
So it's one of those deals where we need to start acknowledging that we need the quote unquote granola crowd if we want the future of public land systems to exist not only in Ohio but in this country.
Well, the way I see it too is, at the end of the day, it's about land and how we use it. needs to be shared regardless. I mean, there's nothing stopping the same people who hike at the metro parks around here from going into Maumee State Forest and hiking just the same. There's not trails per se. There's not whatever, but they have just as much right to be there because it is public land.
Exactly.
And is like, of course, when you open up more voices, obviously there's always going to be, opposition and things of that nature. But I think hunters are pretty vocal, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah.
I mean, as are whatever, but it's like...
Sometimes to our own detriment.
Yes. And it's, people say it all the time. I've had people 100 times say it on this podcast. Hunters are their own worst enemy. Mm-hmm. And it's a PR problem, and it is what it is. I mean, I'm glad there are people out there that people make fun of, like they call, like, oh, the meat eater crowd think they're the intellectuals of the hunting world. But like, it's what, like, people need to have the good PR for this, because it's not, you're killing stuff, man. At the end of the day, you're killing stuff, and it's hard for a lot of people who aren't hip to that to understand, and that's fine. We have to be the ones to figure that out. Mm-hmm. And it's a fine line too, because on Instagram you see people posting bloody pictures and stuff. It's like, does that help? Does that raise awareness? I don't know. It's up to each person to make their own call with that, but it's just like, don't make it look disgusting and off-putting to people.
It doesn't take a lot of effort. Like, look, I'm not down on grip and grin. I take grip and grins with the best of them. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take a lot of effort to take one of these,
cover up a hole,
clean up a little bit, put the tongue back in the mouth, smile. Don't try to look like, Billy Badass out there. Yeah. It's like, it's okay to smile, or it's okay to, take a more serious picture. But at the end of the day, you have to think, when you post something online, other people are going to see it. Mm-hmm. Other people may think, hey, that's great. Other people think, I don't like that. Mm-hmm. And, you got to kind of be conscious towards, the latter group as well. And, maybe that's unpopular to say, and maybe that's unpopular to think. Frankly, I don't care. Yeah. If you want to speak to me about it, then I'm not a hard guy to find. But I mean, we live in this age of social media where, it's important to think about that stuff, because at the end of the day, 10% of our population hunts. Yep. And that's not enough. If all it takes is for something to go to the polls one time, and for it to go the wrong way, and it's gone forever. Mm-hmm. You can see that. Prime example is Colorado and the wolf reintroduction that they had on their ballots. Well, you have Denver and Boulder voting for it because you have those people that like to go, out to Rocky Mountain National Park for a weekend, or drive up to Steamboat Springs, mm-hmm. or Vail, or wherever, and they want to hear a wolf howl. Well, what they don't consider are the people that are trying to live out there and make a living out there, your ranchers, your livestock producers, that, that's going to directly impact them. It's mm-hmm. going to directly impact the wildlife population that's there, the deer and elk. And I don't want to say, I'm not saying all this saying, we extirpated wolves and now we need to keep them out of there forever. But the state of Colorado, Fish and Wildlife was already working on reintroducing wolves. We hunted out there in 2019 north of Steamboat Springs, and we were only, 15 miles from the state of Wyoming. And, we're backpacked in 3-4 miles, and we heard wolves howling at night in Colorado. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those deals where they're there, and if you talk to any rancher or any, most livestock producers out there, they say, we don't have a problem with wolves coming back. Most of them say, would argue to say that, what we did in the past was wrong, and we should have, wildlife back. The problem is you have one group, geographically speaking, for the entire state. So mm-hmm. you think about that in a national level, where we have 10% of the population hunts and fishes. The majority of people that don't, of that remaining 90%, support hunting and fishing as long as it's done lawfully. But when you break it down to trophy hunting, or the people that, the further you break it down, the less and less support you have for it. Mm-hmm. So that invites a kind of a death by 1,000 cuts scenario. Yep. So you see that with people attacking. You know, I talked about dog hunting in the beginning. That kind of ties back to, okay, now you can't hunt with dogs. Now you can't hunt bears over bait. Now you can't do this. Now you can't do that. Pretty soon there's nothing left. So
it's funny because it's the same scenario you find with music or whatever. I mean, I played heavy metal when I still do for a lot of years. And it's like everybody, when they look away, they see a guy dressed in a black t-shirt and he's a metalhead. And then you break it down and then he's like, this genre, and they all hate each other. It's the same thing in the hunting world. We can't even get freaking along with ourselves half the time.
I know it.
But I wanted to circle back to the farming stuff because you're the first person I've had that's a conservationist as well as a farmer, which is a very interesting topic because I've had the Lake Erie Waterkeeper on. I've had the guy who made the documentary about the algal bloom here and stuff. So it's interesting to hear both sides sitting in this room with different people. And on the one side, the Waterkeeper is very critical of H2 Ohio, and then I've had multiple organizations who praise highly H2 Ohio. And so I'm interested. I would love to talk to them because I want to know where the thing is, because it's like, you know, everybody, like some people are very on the line of, I don't know what I'm saying. Like the opinion of some people is very strong and it's my way or the highway. And then some people are a lot more like, we need to work together. So it's interesting as a farmer, how, and you already kind of went through the whole thing with cows and waste management. That's like the whole argument on that side with Lake Erie Waterkeeper and stuff is that waste management is a big problem. So is it the scenario of, as a farmer, you obviously don't want to hurt the environment any more than anybody else because you're also a conservationist. Right. That's what you do. So what's your opinion on that? Because what they talk about a lot is CAFOs. I don't know what kind of farm your family runs. They're very critical on CAFOs. They're very critical on the amount of them in Ohio. So it's interesting how your take is on that. Like, does your family have a giant farm? Is it a family farm?
We're a family farm, and the thing to remember when people think farming, they all initially think factory farms.
Yes,
that's not the case. Most of your farms in the country, across the country, are family farms. The concept of
I live in the middle of a lot of them.
Right. The concept of factory farms is relatively new, but it's one of those buzzwords that gets people firing off right away. So the thing to remember is that most of your livestock, most of your agriculture producers are local families. The problem that we have is that the average American farmer is aging out.
Okay, yes.
And because we've had a generation, our generation and two generations before us, was drilled into a society within the society of you work to get off the farm. Our kids are off the farm.
My father-in-law is an example of that.
Right. You know, so you don't have anybody, you know, none of the kids are staying back to, you know, take on for that next generation of farming. Well, what happens is, you know, the people that do have the means or do have the family to support that still farm, they buy more ground. They have, you know, now instead of one family to support, they're supporting three. You know, mom and dad and two kids and their families. So as that happens, you know, I had permission from Joe Farmer down the road. Well, Joe Farmer died, and, you know, Billy Ray, you know, 10 miles away bought his ground because he had a son that graduated high school and he wants to farm full time. Or, you know, his daughter married a guy and now they're both farming. And so it's one of those deals where from the outsider's perspective, it looks like every time you see a grain leg or a silo system, you think that's a factory farm. And that's not the case. As far as the manure storage and you know, your livestock producers and ag producers in general, if you don't take care of the land that you have, it's not going to produce for you. So there's a great documentary on YouTube. I highly recommend that everybody watches. It's called Guardians of the Grassland, and it's a partnership I believe with the Canadian Ducks Unlimited, and it talks about, kind of our large ungulate system that we used to have. It focuses more kind of in the Great Plains states, or for Canada, the kind of, I think, Saskatchewan region.
Okay, yeah.
But it focuses on where in the past we had these large we had buffalo running around. Well, for the most part, buffalo are gone. So now in order for us to have these large ungulate to kind of help manage those grasslands, because you have these upland species that, and you see the same thing in Ohio with our grouse. We have problem with grouse management in Ohio because we have problems with forest management. Anytime that we try to do a cut, we have outside organizations want to file lawsuits against the Division of Forestry to stop that cutting. Well, when you have these great big when you have these big canopies that don't allow sunlight down on the forest floor, now you don't have a place for grouse populations to breed and lay their eggs.
They like that new growth.
Yeah. Same way with turkeys, and that's part of what we're seeing with declining turkey populations in Ohio as well. So when you look at grassland areas, it's the same way. You need alternating grass species and alternating growth in order to support whatever stage that those hatchlings and that upland population is in. And it trickles down from birds to micro insects to, bugs and dirt and soil health as well. So when you have, you still have to have these large ungulates, and right now beef production is the best way to do that. And it's the same goes with sheep and goats and things as well. You just control. And instead of having wild buffalo, roaming around the countryside, now you have local farmers and ranchers that, they do pasture rotation, or they do, we move from this side to this side. This gets grazed down too far. Okay, we don't want to kill that grass off. We want to give that chance to rebound and regrow. My family and I, we have a herd of about 20 brood cows, and then we raise feedlot cattle as well. We're a grass-fed, grain-finished, or grass and grain-finished operation. Not everybody operates like we do. The cattle that we raise for freezer beef spends its first 8 months of its life basically on grass. Then we bring it in basically, within the next month or so, we'll bring them into a barn, finish them out on grass and on grain, just because the grass in our area basically goes dormant, stops growing, and that way it doesn't stress it out for next spring when it is time to regrow. So it sounds like a lot of detail for farming, but at the end of the day, it's conservation. We're conserving our resource that we have left over from this year to help for our resources next year. So again, kind of might be kind of a round robin for your question, but if you don't, like I say, if you don't preserve the ground that you have, then it's not going to produce for you.
Well, the main point, I think, that a lot of the argument I hear is the family farmer is not a CAFO, and I think people need to realize that, because a family farmer, you're just that. You're a family raising these animals, and it's like having a hunting dog. It takes a lot of work, man. That's a lot of responsibility. If anything, you're balancing on like a razor's edge most of the time. Like, farming is a hard gig, and I think
the money that I'm spending to produce a product for next year, I might go upside down because input costs, continue to rise, and the output's just not there, but it's a lifestyle. I'm providing, a quality product to people on a limited basis that I have, the ability to produce. But I do it because, one, I love it, and two, because it's a tradition thing for me. My dad's father had to leave farming because he had a heart attack, which, at the time it was, well, now you need to move into town because you need a less stressful lifestyle. Well, it probably wasn't any less stressful for him, but it was, he got him off the farm. And, otherwise I would be a like 6th generation farmer. Well, now I'm a 2nd generation farmer. My daughter will be a 3rd generation farmer. So it's something that I want her to be involved with, and because I also think it's important for people to understand where your food system comes from.
Absolutely.
And that's and why do we hunt and fish? Kind of bring it all full circle. It's because we love it. I've eaten deer meat for 4 meals this week.
Yeah.
And I raise beef as part of my income. So, it's one of those deals where it ties you back to a system that people get straying further and further away from. We're at a point where people think that meat comes from the supermarket and your vegetables come from a bag. Well, you can do a little research and do a little background and look around and discover, well, hey, I don't need to buy steak at the supermarket. I can find a local producer. I can go to a farmer's market, get a better product. Yes, I might pay a little bit more for it, but I know it's a more sustainable product. I know, I get to know the person that it's coming from, and most people, I tell people all the time, if you want to see where your beef is coming from, come on out. I'll show you exactly, and you can pick one out for 8 months from now when it's ready to take to the butcher, and you can tell me which one you want.
Yep.
But I always invite people out because I want them to understand better their food system. That way, when people do get into the argument or get engaged with, understanding how our agricultural system works, they get a better understanding of, well, I know so-and-so, and, that's not how they do things. They do things this way. It's not, it's not dumping raw sewage into the water system. It's not, spreading 10 times the amount of fertilizer so that their corn will grow 3 feet higher. It's not, spray painting tomatoes so that they look fresh and pumping them full of preservatives. Yeah. They're doing the best that they can in order to not make a product this year, but make a product for the next 100 years.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, people like to live in a fantasy world where everything's perfect and this and that. And it's like, I'm involved a lot with conservation and environmental issues and stuff like that, because it all at the end of the day, it's all the same thing. It all is the same thing. Whether you're talking hunting, whether you're talking environmental stuff, it's all the same thing at the end of the day, because it's wildlife, wild places.
It's land usage.
Land. And, people have this beautiful idea that farmers are evil. And if there were not farmers, you would not exist. You would be dead. Everything you eat is based, someone grew that, no matter where it came from. So, I mean, to
give people a visual perspective, all right, take a tablespoon of salt, dump it out on the table, and take about 4 grains off to the side. That 4 grains is producing food for the rest of that tablespoon. That's agriculture in the United States.
Yep, 100%. And I think we've hit a lot of topics on this podcast. And I appreciate you. You know a lot about a lot of different things, and it's often you find people that have one perspective on one thing, one perspective on the other, and a lot of people are very niched in what they know. Some people are very, very knowledgeable about policy. Some people are very knowledgeable about, environmental issues, but you know a lot about a lot of different things, which I think is really awesome, because not everybody, I'm like you in the sense that I get bored learning about one thing forever. I'm like so ADHD. I'm like this one day, this day, I'm going to upland hunt this day, I'm going to deer hunt this day, I'm going to go fish this day, I'm going to do this. And it's awesome to see other people that are like that, because having that broader perspective, gives you a more balanced approach to understanding conservation, and it kind of allows you to have those harder conversations with people who might not agree with you.
Right. And I guess to kind of circle back to BHA, if you look at our organization, we've taken polls in the past where, we're a fairly moderate group in a lot of different areas. Like, if you break us down politically, it's like 30% of people identify as Republicans, 30% of people identify as Democrats, 30% of people identify as independents, and it breaks down from there. Our average age is around, I think is around 40, where if you look at any other organization or conservation organization, it's closer to 70, between 60 and 70. financially, we may not have those big financial backers that you see at like a Pheasants Forever banquet when somebody drops, 15 grand on an auction gun or whatever. I was at a Ducks Unlimited banquet where the puppy went for like 12 grand, but you can see that at our BHA rendezvous that we have every year. People spend that kind of money on stuff, but what kind of separates us is our youth, our energy, our kind of broad perspective on a lot of different areas. And we've been accused of the green decoy thing in the past, and people think we're kind of this left-wing group trying to disguise ourselves as this and that, or we're the granola crowd trying to disguise ourselves as a group of hunters and fishermen. Listen, I've been to Boise twice for the BHA rendezvous. I've met members from all over the country. You want to talk about the most badass group of men and women? People that you look at them and you think you did that. I've met women that are like 5 foot nothing, weigh 100 pounds, soaking wet, and they'll hike in 10 miles on an elk hunt and kill one and carry it out.
Yeah.
I've gone in myself and done that stuff, and it's like you feel like you're gonna die. So to look at somebody a third my size do this, it's just like, well, I really need to man up right now. But but you just meet people from all walks of life. Our board of directors, and if you look at any board of directors across the country for our organization, we've had airline pilots on our board. We've had horseshoe farriers. We've had, people that work in human services and just this wide array of people, and that's something that for me personally has really opened my eyes as far as like difference of perspective. Is you meet these people and it kind of forces you to think to yourself, well, this is how I live, but that's how they have to live. And so it invites you to kind of look at things from a different approach.
Yep.
And you can, obviously we're talking about the world of hunting and fishing and public land, but you can carry that over into a lot of different areas as well too. So I think it's important to have that kind of nuanced perspective on a lot of different areas. And that's why I talk about like the areas of a backpack tax, or kind of being mindful when you post something on social media, or just anything really. Be kind and courteous with good trailhead diplomacy. You have to have that nuanced perspective in order to kind of get a better understanding of where somebody else's viewpoints and thoughts might be coming from. You don't have to agree with it, but you have to at least understand where they're trying to come from. Because most people in their own mind believe that they're coming from a good place. Nobody does stuff intentionally thinking, F that person. Like it's they're in their mind, in their perspective, they're coming from a good place.
Well, and in that same perspective, I've literally talked to vegans that would stab you for just wanting to hunt. Not quite that militant. And then I explained to them like, no, this is why I do it. It's the same reason you're vegan.
Right.
It's the same reason, except for you're here and I'm here. You're on this far end, I'm on this far end. It's all about why we're eating and the environment for me. That's it. At the end of the day, that's it. And they're like, oh my God, I never thought about that. Yeah. And I'm like, see, we're not that different. You just don't like blood. Right. Like, well, you're kind of right.
Steve Ranella has a really good video, and it's one of his first videos that he ever, this is back
I know
before
exactly what you're talking about.
This is back before it was Meat Eater. This is back before, like, he basically had just wrote a book, and he was at a book signing. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners have probably seen the video, but it does such a good job of having somebody from one space talk to somebody from a completely different space. And you can tell, this guy was a vegan. You could tell he was there with the mindset of, I want to ask this hard question to try to trip this guy up. Because Steve did such a good job.
You could tell he wanted to scream at the dude. He held back so well.
He did such a good job of saying, I understand where your thought process is. I can guarantee I love deer more than you love deer.
Yeah.
He said, the difference between you and I is that you love deer on the individual spectrum. You love this deer. I love all deer. Yep. And so, again, he practiced trailhead diplomacy in the middle of a book signing in the middle of New York City, but it's going at it from a nuanced approach. And you can tell, like, the guy that is asking that question was flabbergasted. Yeah. Because he was expecting to get into a screaming match with this hunter that wrote a book. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it was conducted amicably. Mm-hmm. It was done with mutual respect. And you know, obviously the video cuts out, but I can guarantee you that afterwards, if there was more conversation had, it was done in the same way.
Well, I remind myself often to try and be that way because, like, when you post on social media, it's a free mm-hmm. board for anyone to say whatever they want. And I actually, yesterday, I was talking to somebody that's been on the podcast before about how, you know, it's so hard to get people to just, like, think differently about things. I had these two guys on a post. We were talking about essentially the backpack tax, mm-hmm. and it was a short clip. So you only have like a minute on social media to get your point across. So I'm trying to edit these things so that you're getting the point across, and maybe I missed the mark on it a little bit because it wasn't, you know, you only have so much time to do this as well too. I'm only one person. And these guys are like, these fucking idiots don't know what they're talking about. Ever heard of the Pittman Robertson? When you're in your own head of like, of course I know what that is. Like, I have the freaking textbook of the North American Model of Conservation on my desk at home right now. I'm reading it. Like, so like you have to try not to get offended and like be like, I said, actually the full context of this, we're talking about how, you know, a lot of hunting and fishing funds some conservation and things like this, but we're really debating whether or not every outdoor user should have to pay a little bit towards this to fund these places. Right. And they're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And I'm like, okay, and you have to be, you can't, I could have just been like, deleted the comment or been like, fuck you, I don't give a what you're saying to me. And, but you can't be like that if you're trying to, if your end goal is to actually work with other people. Right.
If your end goal is to try to, nobody's ever been convinced to look at things through another viewpoint by having you demean their viewpoint.
And it's so hard.
It's hard. I mean, it's definitely hard. But, you know, and that's where it you know, kind of like your mom used to say, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all.
Exactly.
So
that just comes with age too.
There's a lot of truth involved with that.
Well, Tony, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a really awesome conversation. It's the first one that's been an hour and a half in a very long time. So I appreciate you coming out here.
No problem. Anytime.
Before we wrap up, where can people not only learn more about BHA, but how can they join and how can they learn more specifically about the Ohio chapter?
Because that's absolutely. What we're focusing on. So if you go, we have our Instagram page. It's OHBHA or at OHBHA. We're on Facebook at Ohio Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And if you go to our website, it's just Backcountry Hunters. Backcountryhunters.org, or just Google Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and it'll take you to the website. Within that website, you can find the individual state chapters. You can click on Ohio, kind of see what we're up to. We try to have blog posts on there at least every month, you know, at least keep you up to date on there. And you can find membership information available there as well. And we have different levels of membership, but our base membership is a yearly membership for $35. You know, pretty much, you know, the cost of a case of beer is what our membership is. I mean, it comes with a quarterly magazine and keeps you up to date on different events coming up throughout the state. But we also try to post, you know, events coming up on our Facebook and Instagram page as well. Try to keep folks up to date with as much going on as possible, with as much notice as we can as well. We have a couple events coming up this fall. We're trying to make, we try to do things like cleanups and tree plantings and you know, trail maintenance, things like that. But then we also just try to have, you know, just regular pint nights as well. Just, you know, again, like you said, a networking event where people can come out and talk and meet with people, and I've watched people make lifelong hunting partners at these events, and it's a beautiful thing. It's like watching somebody skip the first three dates and get to that really serious one, and just become lifelong friends, and but it's even if you don't hunt or fish and you just want to kind of get a better understanding of what we're all about, I always invite people to please come out to a pint night. Talk to any one of us. We're always wanting to meet people. We're always wanting to talk with people. And even if you don't become a member, at least you get a better understanding of what we're about. We like to partner with different organizations. We've had river cleanups with Ohio Women on the Fly.
Awesome group. They've been on this podcast.
God, if you some of the most badass women I've ever met in my life. Katie Johnstone. She's, again, when I talk about a 5'0" 100-pound soaking wet, but I've seen pictures of her, in Grizz country up in Alaska, all to go fishing. You want to talk about people that are ate up with it. It's that group right there.
100%.
But yeah, please come out to our events. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on Instagram. Like I say, I'm not a hard guy to find. If you got any questions, just get a hold of me.
Like I said at the beginning, I don't join groups unless I've met the people, and I've joined you guys, part of MUCC, and I'm looking for other groups to join because it's really important. As I like to say pretty often, a lot of people out there bitching, not a lot of people doing shit.
Right.
So if you want to be in the group doing stuff, get involved with these organizations because they can help your voice get amplified. A lot of people feel helpless when it comes to this stuff.
And listen,
it's overwhelming.
I'll be the first to tell you I do a lot of policy work within the organization. It's not always glamorous. It's not always fun. It's a lot of times it's pretty boring, but it's necessary to be done. And I'll keep doing it, whether it's within BHA or any other form for the rest of my life. It's just because it's work that needs to be done.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for driving out here.
No problem.
Hope to stay in touch.
Absolutely.